everybody, welcome back. And our discussion for today is the 8 biggest mistakes parents make during a divorce and how to avoid them. First, I'll read them to you, then we'll go through them one by one. First is not acting in your child's best interest. Next is not making your child a priority in your life. 3 is allowing your emotions to get the best of you. 4 is running up legal fees. 5 is losing control of your finances and expenses. 6 is not spending your custodial time with your child. 7 is violating the support order. And 8 is bad-mouthing or alienating the other parent. Now, it's always important to do the right thing, but it's equally as important to refrain from doing the wrong thing. If divorce and custody are uncharted territory, you're going to experience a steep learning curve. Now, as a 2-time veteran of this process, I want to share with you lessons that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal bills to learn, which should not only help you improve your parenting and reduce your legal bills, but these lessons should also help you preserve your child's mental health, as well as help you retain your sanity. And you can't put a price on that. Have you ever heard the saying, if you think education's expensive, try ignorance? In order to help you avoid these pitfalls, I've comprised a list of mistakes that parents make during divorce and custody that can be expensive both financially and mentally, and how you can avoid them. So let's get into it. First one I mentioned already, not acting in your child's best interest. Whether you're getting divorced or not, you want to always be doing this. Yes, it becomes more difficult sometimes during a divorce when you're the only decision maker or you have pressure from the other parent, but you always need to keep this first and foremost. It's the most important thing. Now, the best interest of the child doctrine is a standard that the court uses also for determining how much time each parent should have with the child. So it's not only about that, the court's also looking very closely at this. Now, it's important to understand what this means and how to apply it. While it's the standard for custody determinations in most states, not every state uses the same criteria. The courts look at multiple factors in making custody determinations that are in the best interest of the child. Now, while you may think that your child's best interest seems obvious, more often than not, parents during a divorce do the opposite of what's best for their children. They almost automatically assume that they're the better parent, and the child spending more time with me is clearly in the child's best interest. Oftentimes, parents miss the forest because of the trees, and they fail to see the bigger picture. So while it's easy to get bogged down in the details and distracted by the negative emotions, we have to strive to look at ourselves objectively and make decisions that are best for our children's lives. For example, if you work till 7 o'clock every night, yet you want time with your child during the week, it's neither realistic nor in the best interest of the child to spend all those hours in daycare or alone when they could have been with the other parent. I mean, it seems common sense, but people make this mistake all the time. Oftentimes, we confuse what's in our child's best interest with what's best for us. Sometimes we just can't make that distinction because we get so much emotional baggage and fighting going on. Now, it's not just my opinion, but this is the conclusion of many studies and psychologists, that children need both parents in their lives. But even more important is how the states now view this in custody. Frequent and regular contact between both parents keeps the bond strong. I can't say this enough. Child needs both parents. It's that simple. Don't make the mistake of thinking you're the only good parent. Even if you're completely convinced that your parenting style is far superior to that of the other parent, and even if you're right, the child will still benefit from time with both of you. And this is because of differences in personalities, experience, and style. So take a deep breath and try not to be so critical of what happens when the child's in the other parent's household. As long as it doesn't negatively impact the child in an obvious and verifiable manner, in other words, it's not your opinion, what happens in the child in the other parent's household it's not your primary concern. Unless their safety is at stake, and you can prove that, you got to settle down and you got to calm down about that. You may feel the need to run back to court and complain about your ex's bad parenting. Oh, they're a horrible parent. But you have to resist that urge. Because after all, is there any parent who doesn't feel that they're the better parent? So unless the other parent is endangering their health, their welfare of your child, and once again, in an obvious and verifiable manner, you need to accept that parenting styles differ, period. And this is good for your child. We all make mistakes, but the truth is, we tend to learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. The same goes for parenting. Try to stay focused on the big picture. At the end of the day, it's your job to raise a well-adjusted, self-actualized, independent adult. It takes a village to raise a child. If you try to do it alone, or without the coordination of the other parent, you're most likely not acting in your child's best interest. Hopefully I made that clear. Okay, moving along. Not making your child a priority. Oftentimes, to avoid prolonged litigation, some fathers give in to mother's demands for the majority of custodial time with the child. While keeping the peace is important, and minimizing court time is generally a pretty wise strategy, you don't want it to be at the expense of the child, though. You may not be looking out for your child's best interest if you concede too much custodial time. Who would have guessed? But as mentioned above, children need frequent and regular contact with each parent to form deep, lasting bonds. I'm saying that slow and I'm emphasizing. Hopefully you're getting this. Now, while you don't want a judge to decide down to the minute which parent gets more custodial time, assuming you're available to spend good quality time with your child when it's scheduled, it's a good idea to work towards a reasonable custodial split that works for both parents and the child. Don't give away your kids and miss out on being a significant part of their lives just to compromise. We talked about this in another section, but once again to reinforce it, temporary custody orders and schedules are very important. If you initially have an agreement that the child reside primarily or exclusively with the mother or the other parent, there is a very strong probability that the final court order is going to look a lot like that. So as soon as you decide to separate, you should request to work out an agreement where you both have significant custodial time with your child. Don't make the mistake of thinking that it's going to change significantly once the court gets involved. Temporary orders set precedents and oftentimes become permanent orders. Now, it's also to keep everything in perspective and remember that quality is more important than quantity when it comes to time with the child. It's essential to engage the child. Just because you're in the same space at the same time does not mean you're spending quality time together. You need to engage in activities that both of you enjoy while maintaining a structure and balance in the child's life. Don't be a Disneyland dad, but don't make it all work and no play either. Balance and making your child a priority, it's the key to raising a well-adjusted child. And making and spending quality time with your child is the best way to make sure your child is a priority in your life. At the Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services, which is in Pomona, there's a quote on the wall which reads, "If you want your child to turn out well, your children to turn out well, spend twice as much time with them and half as much money." And Abigail Van Buren is credited for saying that. And I agree completely. Spend the time, but quality time. Don't just be in the same space with them. Enough said. Moving along, allowing your emotions to get the best of you. There are multiple ways that emotions can get the best of us during a divorce, and especially a custody evaluation. And there are certain people around which it is most important to control your emotions. These are the judge, the custody evaluator, your children, and the other parent. You need to maintain your cool around all of them. Oftentimes, a judge will form an opinion about a parent by their facial expressions and body language during proceedings. You'll notice a lot of lawyers try to remain completely emotionless, and that is the way to do it. Anger and negativity can hurt your prospects for a favorable outcome in a custody evaluation. Aside from controlling your temper, you also need to be mindful of the tone of your voice, facial expressions, body language, rolling your eyes. You need to monitor what you say. For example, my ex is a horrible person, she never does the right thing, he cheated on me, she's an alcoholic, he's lazy, he got bad breath, destroying our child. Do any of these sound familiar? Unsubstantiated allegations can damage your credibility in court. And all these things are equally, if not more important, than when dealing with custody evaluators. Watch the tone of your voice, watch what you say, watch your facial expressions. Now, judges and evaluators, they've heard it all. They assume you're going to lie, exaggerate, and generally badmouth the other person. So not only will these declarations of how horrible your ex is fall upon skeptical or deaf ears, but they might hurt your case as well. A good rule of thumb is always take the high road. I had to serve my ex with court papers on a day that we happened to be in the courtroom together on a related matter. The judge asked her if she was willing to be served there, and she responded, "Absolutely not." The judge then simply handed the bailiff the papers and served her there in the courtroom. And in the process, my ex helped my case by displaying her anger and demonstrating she was uncooperative. Bitch. So, you don't ever want to make that mistake. I mean, thank goodness she did, but whatever. It's better to explain why you're the good parent as opposed to why the other parent is the bad parent. If they're endangering the child's life, that's one thing, but once again, it must be verifiable, okay, not your opinion. And I've met many dads who could write volumes on why their ex was a horrible mother. But when it comes to saying why they were a good father, there was very little to be said. Now, you don't have to be a judge to see what's going to be favored in that custody evaluation. An evaluator or judge is going to ask you about the parenting skills of the other parent. This should not be viewed as the opportunity of a lifetime to blast them. You need to stick to the facts and always present it as a concern. Well, I'm concerned that this is happening. Stay calm and point to examples that can be documented. For example, I'm concerned that my child's education is suffering because my son has been absent 8 times and late 17 times while in her custody. Here's the report card and schedule so you can see that all the latenesses and absences occurred on her custodial days. We have a saying, stay in your lane. That means don't try to be a psychologist projecting the potential damage to the child of your ex's poor parenting skills. If you're not an expert, don't pretend to be one. State the facts, document them, let the judge reach their own conclusion or the evaluator. Now, another important characteristic that judges and evaluators look for in parents is the willingness to share. One simple way to demonstrate that you're willing to share the child with the other parent is to use inclusive language with words such as our child, not my child. It goes a long way towards influencing how the judge views you as a parent. Now, when it comes to dealing with the child, there's usually going to be feelings of hurt and resentment and anger at the end of a relationship. This is to be understood. And when there are children involved, these feelings are magnified. But what should be obvious is that it's not your child's fault. We need to be careful not to transfer the anger, resentment, disappointment that we feel toward the other parent to the child, especially when they deliver some piece of news that we don't agree with. Mom said you have to, blah, blah, blah. Our children remind us of the other parent and sometimes even take their side when caught in the middle, delivering information that we do not agree with or we don't want to hear. But it's imperative that we control our emotions when we say and what we say. I mean, when a relationship's over, you need to change the way you interact with the other parent. Your relationship with the other parent should become more like that of a business partner and conducted professionally, and definitely not through your child. The child should be shielded as much as possible from feelings of hurt and anger, as well as details of the divorce that aren't relevant to them. Don't put them in the middle of it. They don't need to be. They're children, for God's sakes. Let them be children. Okay, my favorite, dealing with the other parent. It's critically important that we control our emotions around the other parent. If you know or believe you'll be getting divorced and still living together, this is even more important. Now, a negative tactic that's used to gain advantage before custody is settled is known as the silver bullet. This is when a parent will accuse the other parent of domestic violence. And even if it's not true, it's going to put you at a disadvantage when custody is being determined. You should always be vigilant to stay calm and not put yourself in a position where this tactic can be used against you. No matter how difficult it may be, you have to be on your best behavior when interacting with the other parent. Sadly, many parents take the exact opposite approach. Now, we'll discuss more negative tactics later on, but I just want to get this out there so you hear it more than once. Okay, number 4 is running up legal fees. Fighting over things that don't matter in the long run is very common, and it's a costly mistake for divorcing parents. I don't care how much it costs, I want them to suffer for what they did. Well, other than to delight your attorney about how much they're going to make from you, this statement demonstrates the wrong attitude, and it's going to get you both in trouble as well as cost you plenty in the end. I'm the mother, so not only will I get full custody, he'll be lucky if he ever gets to see my kids again. I picked out that dining room set and I'm keeping it no matter how much it costs. He makes more than I do, so he's going to have to pay my legal bills, so I'm going to hit him with everything. Now, the legal firm of "this is yours and that's mine" loves to hear statements like that. Many fathers also initiate extensive battles to be the primary custodial parent in an effort to reduce support payments. Now, unfortunately, many mothers use increased support as their motivation for not agreeing to joint custody, either physical or legal, as well. Now, in states like California, it's easy to use this tactic as support is based on the amount of custodial time you have with the child. But this is a mistake. I knew a dad who wanted to be the primary custodial parent even though he was not available during the week and living in his girlfriend's trailer with her kids. And he did this just to avoid paying child support. Well, not surprisingly, the judge didn't agree with his request. Now, some states make it your responsibility for paying the other parent's legal fees, not only based on your ability to pay, but also if you feel if you're unnecessarily running up the cost of litigation. And it's true, even if you're only following the advice of your attorney. My ex's attorney wheeled in 12 banker's boxes of legal documents and case files when a new judge was appointed in year 4 of our divorce. And she did it to be dramatic. But instead, when the judge saw this, she became enraged and shouted, "This ends now." The reality is that my ex outspent me on litigation 4-1, and I earned double what she made. But in the end, I was only required to pay a fraction of her attorney's fees, despite their ongoing request for me to pay 100%. So be sensible, take the high road, and do whatever you can to minimize your legal expenses. When it's all over, you'll be glad you did. And once again, do you want to use your savings to send your kids to college or your lawyer's kids? It's that simple. Okay, related? Losing control of your finances and expenses. When you divorce, your combined expenses may virtually double as you need 2 of many things, especially once you start adding a second furnished home, child support, alimony payments, and legal bills. You're going to have to objectively evaluate your finances, and you're most likely going to have to change your lifestyle. If you don't adapt your budget and your spending habits, you may not survive financially. Now, the sad truth is many divorcing couples who refuse to compromise may end up filing for bankruptcy. So the sooner you realize your financial reality has drastically changed, the sooner you need to adjust to a new expense structure. And hopefully you'll be able to do that. A good financial plan will also help you make the best use of your custodial time. And ask yourself about every contested issue. Is it worth fighting over this if I end up filing for bankruptcy? Is it worth fighting over this if my children end up in therapy over it? Ask yourself these questions, because the answer is usually going to be no, and you just have to stop yourself when you feel that you're getting too emotional or that you're digging your heels in. Okay, next subject. Not spending your custodial time with your child. If you don't have a significant other at the time of the divorce, it's better to leave it that way until custody's settled. Because if you do have a girlfriend or boyfriend, especially when they're there with your custodial time with the child, make sure you spend it with them and not hand off your child to your significant other or anyone else for that matter. In fact, whenever possible, it may be better if your significant other is not even there, unless you're absolutely certain they're going to be a permanent part of your child's lives. Otherwise, she will be dragged into the custody evaluation, increasing the complexity, thereby making it more difficult and clearly more expensive to obtain a favorable outcome. I worked with a dad who wanted to be the primary custodial parent, even though he wasn't available during the week and he was living with his girlfriend. He'd have his children stay at his girlfriend's when he wasn't even there. Once the judge found out, he ended up having his custodial time decreased. Don't make this mistake. I shouldn't even have to say this, but we're going to go through it. Violating the support order. Don't do it. Once you have a support order in place, you have to pay it. If you have a change in your financial circumstances, for example, you lose your job or your income decreases significantly, you can't simply stop paying support. The order stays in force until the court modifies it. If your financial situation has changed since your last court order, check with your lawyer as to what you need to do. You may have to file a modification request or preserve your rights and change the support order. But you can't just stop paying support without the approval of the court. You can be held in contempt for violating a support order, and this is not going to help your case. Or they can modify the existing order in favor of the other parent. So just don't make that mistake. If you have a good relationship with the other parent and you believe it's temporary and the two of you agree on a change and they will put it in writing, then it's possible to avoid going to court to get the modification. But this is fraught with risk, so it's better to avoid this scenario. If you have to go down this road, make sure it's in writing, make sure it's clear, make sure it's well written, and that there's no reasonable misinterpretation of the meaning. Have a friend look at it, make sure they interpret it the same way. And the best solution is always write it up. If it's new or temporary agreement, you both sign it, and then you just file it with the court without having to appear before a judge. Okay, this is next one. It's a big topic, parental alienation, or bad-mouthing the other parent. We'll spend a lot more time on this in another section, but suffice it to say, sometimes little things have significant unintended consequences. A negative comment about the other parent can not only have a negative impact on your child, but also damage the whole custody agreement. It could violate custody, it could cause all kinds of problems. In fact, most custody orders explicitly prohibit making disparaging remarks about the other parent. Just remember, your child is half of both of you. When you make negative remarks about the other parent that the child can hear, either directly or indirectly, it's equivocal to your making those remarks about your child. This is one of the most damaging things you can do, as it will cause the child to feel sad, responsible, or the need to side with the other parent or protect the other parent. Other potential negative consequences are you may end up hating or fearing the other parent or the parent who made the remarks. It could also cause the child to feel depressed or to act out at home during exchanges or towards others. Parents need to be careful not to speak poorly of the other parent, even when it's not obvious or intentional. Of course, you're going to have negative feelings, and you should express those negative feelings at the appropriate time and place. But you must be mindful not to do it in front of your children, especially as this could be a violation of your custody order or damaging to your child. Friends, family, therapist, religious, even a bartender is a better choice to vent your feelings to, but anything is better than venting them to your child. So always try to be positive in front of the children. In fact, outside of custody and divorce, this is always good parenting advice, always. Now, akin to parental alienation is putting your child in the middle. Why would you want to cause additional stress to your son or daughter? There's some parents who overtly try to use their child to agitate or get back at the other parent. In other situations, parents may not think about the consequences of using the child for the delivery of messages, even on minor issues such as temporary schedule changes. For example, if there's a birthday party for your parents and you want your son to be there, but it falls on your non-custodial weekend, don't put your child in the middle by making them deliver the message. It puts them in an uncomfortable position. Plus, how often do people react poorly to unexpected news and want to kill the messenger? It's better if you never ask your child to deliver verbal messages. You can phone, text, email, write a note to the other parent, but you have to shield your child as much as possible from the business of divorce, even when you consider them maybe minor or insignificant changes. Some parents use a notebook that goes back and forth with the child for this purpose. If you use a notebook, just be aware that's a possibility the child may end up reading it. And once again, this could be a cause for confusion, guilt, anger, or a multitude of other unintended consequences. But if you're careful about how it's done, it can be a useful tool. Just be mindful not to ever intentionally put your child in the middle of your divorce. There's already enough to contend with in this process. How can we sum all this up? Attempt to approach divorce and custody in a logical and objective manner. Well, of course it's emotional. It's the court's mandate to fairly terminate and divide up a legal partnership. Regardless of what surprises and accusations the other parent may throw your way, you have to remain positive and take the high road. Try to view it through the court's eyes. The best offense is a good defense, and that begins by not making mistakes that are easily avoidable. Your judgment may be clouded by emotion, which is why it's helpful to have a custody coach or somebody knowledgeable other than an attorney guide you through the process. A custody coach can save you money, improve your parenting, and help you keep your sanity. And at the end of the day, isn't it in your child's best interest to spend time with both parents? So hopefully this will help you avoid some of the common mistakes parents make during divorce. And ultimately, you'll be happy that you did. There's nothing more important than your child. And while you may harbor anger towards the other parent, don't ever let that misguide you into making bad decisions for your child. This is Joe Pastore with My Custody Coach and Platinum Method Coaching. I hope you found this informative, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Make it a great day.